The pain came 3 days early. Lyra Emberfell knew the moment fire ignited in her veins that she was going to die. Not from the heat itself, though it burned through her body like wildfire consuming dry timber. Not from the desperate ache building in places she had learned to ignore, to suppress, to pretend didn't exist. She was going to die because Omega Heat was supposed to wait. It was supposed to come after a mating, after a claiming, after an alpha placed his mark on tender skin and bound himself to her forever. That was the natural order. That was how the moon goddess designed their kind. But Lyra's heat didn't care about natural order. It arrived 3 days early, on a morning when frost painted the windows of her small room white and her breath misted in the cold air. She had woken to cramping, so severe she couldn't stand, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything but curl into a ball and bite down on her blanket to muffle the sounds clawing their way up her throat. The scent poured off her in waves, sweet like honeysuckle, rich like cream, impossible to hide. And in the Emberfell pack, where every wolf lived in close quarters and secrets died before they could take root, there was nowhere to run. Lyra heard them coming. Heavy footsteps in the hallway outside her door. Raised voices, her mother's pleading tones high and desperate. Her father's silence, which somehow felt worse than shouting. Then Garrick's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. "Open the door." 3 words. That was all it took. Lyra pressed her face into the pillow and tried to remember how to breathe. Garrick Ashenlord had been courting her for 6 months. He was handsome, powerful, third in line to lead the Emberfell pack. Every unmated Omega in their territory would have killed for his attention. But he had chosen Lyra, or so she had thought. The door crashed open. Lyra didn't look up. She couldn't. Shame burned hotter than the heat in her blood, more painful than the cramping in her belly. 3 days early, Garrick's voice carried no warmth. No recognition that this was the woman he had kissed under the full moon just last week. The woman he had whispered promises to, the woman he had said he would claim when the time was right. The time was supposed to be right in 3 days. "I'm sorry." Lyra's voice came out broken, barely audible. "I don't know why." "Of course you don't." Garrick stepped closer. Lyra could smell him now, pine and smoke and winter air. The scent that had once made her feel safe now made her stomach turn. "Because you're broken, Lyra. Defective. What kind of Omega can't even manage a proper heat cycle?" The words landed like physical blows. Lyra forced herself to look up. Garrick stood in her doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair pulled back from a face that might have been handsome, if not for the disgust twisting his features. Behind him, she could see others, pack members, friends, people she had known her entire life. They had all come to watch. "Please." The word tasted like ash in her mouth. "Just give me a few hours. I can get through this. I can..." "You can what?" Garrick crossed his arms over his chest. "Hide it, suppress it, pretend you're normal when you're clearly not." Behind him, someone laughed. The sound cut through Lyra like broken glass. "Get dressed," Garrick said. His voice had gone flat, empty. "You're coming with me." Lyra's hands shook as she pulled on clothes. Simple things, a worn dress, boots that had seen better days. Her fingers fumbled with laces and buttons while the heat built and built and built inside her, demanding attention she couldn't give. They walked her through the pack house in silence. No, not silence. Whispers followed her like shadows. Lyra kept her eyes on the floor, watching her feet move one in front of the other across wooden planks she had walked 1,000 times before. She knew every knot in this wood, every scratch, every stain. She had been happy here once. The main hall opened before them like a mouth. 200 wolves stood waiting, arranged in a perfect circle around the central fire pit. The heat from the flames made the air shimmer. Or maybe that was just Lyra's vision blurring. Pack Alpha Aldrich Emberfell sat in his carved wooden chair at the far end of the hall. Lyra's father stood to his left, face pale and drawn. Her mother wept openly, but no one moved to comfort her. "Lyra Emberfell," the Alpha's voice boomed through the space. Deep, authoritative, final. "Step forward." Lyra's legs barely held her weight. She stumbled forward, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. The Omega heat made her skin too tight, too hot. Her dress clung to her body, damp with sweat despite the winter cold. "You know why you're here?" Not a question, a statement. Lyra nodded. Speaking felt impossible. "Then you know what must be done." Alpha Aldrich leaned forward in his chair. "An Omega who cannot control her cycle is a danger to the pack, a distraction, a weakness we cannot afford." "She's cursed," someone muttered from the crowd. Others murmured agreement. "Broken," another voice added. "Barren," a third voice supplied. And this word hit harder than all the others combined, because Lyra knew in the deepest part of herself that it might be true. Heat 3 days early meant something was wrong. Fundamentally, irrevocably wrong. Garrick Ashenlord, the Alpha's attention shifted. You have been courting this Omega. What say you? Garrick stepped forward. He moved with the easy confidence of a wolf who had never known rejection, never experienced shame, never doubted his place in the world. He didn't look at Lyra when he spoke. I reject this bond. Each word fell like stones into still water, sending ripples through the assembled pack. Lyra Emberfell is not worthy to be my mate. She is defective, broken, a disgrace to her bloodline, and a stain on our pack's honor. The formal rejection hit Lyra like a physical blow. She gasped, stumbling back a step. Her chest felt tight. Her heart hammered against her ribs. On what grounds, Alpha Aldrich asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. On the grounds that she cannot fulfill the most basic Omega function. Garrick finally looked at Lyra, and the cold dismissal in his eyes was worse than hatred would have been. She cannot bear children, cannot build a pack, cannot be trusted to maintain even her own cycle. She is worthless. Worthless, the word echoed in the sudden silence. Lyra wanted to scream that he was wrong. She wanted to defend herself, to fight back, to prove that she was more than her designation, more than her broken body. But shame held her tongue. Because what if he was right? Then it is decided. Alpha Aldrich stood. The hall fell silent. Lyra Emberfell, by the authority granted to me as Alpha of the Emberfell Pack, I hereby strip you of your rank and status. You are Omega no longer. You are nothing. Lyra's knees hit the floor. She hadn't meant to kneel, but her legs simply gave out, dropping her into the mud-tracked floor of the hall. Cold seeped through her dress. She couldn't feel it past the heat still burning through her veins. Furthermore, the Alpha continued, you are banished from Emberfell territory. You will leave immediately, alone with nothing but the clothes on your back. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Into the frostbite blizzard, Lyra's mother cried out. Aldrich, please, that's a death sentence. Then perhaps the moon goddess will show more mercy than we have. The Alpha's expression remained carved from stone. Take her to the border. Release her on the north side where the storm is strongest. Strong hands gripped Lyra's arms, hauling her to her feet. She didn't resist. What would be the point? Two male wolves she had known since childhood dragged her toward the door, and Lyra caught one final glimpse of Garrick's face. He looked relieved. The walk to the border took an hour. Snow had begun to fall, fat flakes that caught in Lyra's hair and melted against her feverish skin. The guards didn't speak to her. They didn't need to. Their grip on her arms said everything necessary about what they thought of the broken Omega. They were marching to her death. The temperature dropped with every step they took northward. By the time they reached the boundary markers, Lyra's breath came out in white clouds, and her fingers had gone numb despite the heat raging inside her. Beyond the markers, the world disappeared into white. The frostbite blizzard lived up to its name. Wind howled like a living thing, driving snow horizontal across the landscape. Visibility ended 3 feet from Lyra's face. The cold hit like a wall, stealing the air from her lungs. This is where you die, one of the guards said. Not cruel, just factual. No wolf survives the frostbite in heat. The fever will burn you out while the cold freezes what's left. May the moon goddess have mercy on your broken soul, the other guard added. Then they shoved her forward across the boundary line and turned back toward warmth and safety and home. Lyra stood alone in the screaming white void. The blizzard swallowed her whole. She walked because stopping meant death. One foot in front of the other, again, again, again. The snow reached her knees, then her thighs, making each step a battle against wind and weight and her own failing body. The heat made everything worse. While the blizzard tried to freeze her, her Omega biology fought back with fire that consumed her from the inside. Lyra's skin burned, her muscles cramped. Sweet honeysuckle scent poured off her in waves that the wind scattered into nothing. No Alpha would find her here. No one would claim her. She would die alone, exactly as Garrick had said she deserved. Time lost meaning in the white. Lyra might have walked for minutes or hours. She couldn't tell. Couldn't think past the pain and the cold and the desperate animal need to keep moving. When she fell, snow cushioned the impact. Lyra lay face down in a drift, too exhausted to rise. The cold didn't hurt anymore. That seemed like a bad sign, but she couldn't remember why. Her thoughts moved slow, thick like honey in winter. The moon goddess must really hate her, she thought distantly. To be born Omega, to be born broken, to be rejected so publicly, to die so alone. Something glowed behind her closed eyelids. Lyra forced her eyes open. Snowflakes caught on her lashes, blurring her vision, but she could still see the faint golden light emanating from her own hands. Her palms pressed flat against the snow, melting through the ice, leaving perfect handprints in the slush beneath. The glow intensified, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The cramping in her belly shifted, changed. Instead of the sharp, demanding pain of Omega heat, Lyra felt something else. Something older. Something that had nothing to do with her designation and everything to do with power she didn't understand. The glow spread up her arms. Warmth followed, but not the feverish heat of her cycle. This was different. Controlled. Like sunlight trapped beneath her skin. Lyra pushed herself up. Her hands left glowing prints in the snow that faded slowly, the ice reluctant to return to cold. She stared at her palms. The light had dimmed but not disappeared entirely. A faint golden shimmer danced across her skin, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. This wasn't normal. This wasn't Omega biology. This was something else entirely. A sharp crack split the air. Lyra's head snapped up. Through the driving snow, she could just make out a darker shape against the white, a cave entrance barely visible, hidden in the lee of a massive boulder. Shelter. She stumbled toward it, driven by instinct more than conscious thought. The cave mouth yawned before her like salvation, and Lyra fell into blessed darkness that offered protection from the killing wind. Inside, the blizzard's roar became a distant howl. Lyra collapsed against the cave wall, shaking from cold and heat and exhaustion. The glowing in her hands had faded to nothing, but she could still feel it lurking just beneath her skin, like a secret her body had been keeping. Her breathing echoed in the small space. She closed her eyes just for a moment, just to rest. The scent hit her first. Pine, clean and sharp, mixed with something darker, richer. Leather and smoke and rain-soaked earth. Alpha, 2 of them. Lyra's eyes flew open. She scrambled backward deeper into the cave until her shoulders hit solid rock. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to make herself small and invisible. But she had nowhere left to run. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, shapes resolved themselves from shadow. 2 massive forms lay sprawled across the cave floor, barely visible in the dim light filtering through the entrance. Men. No, not men. Alphas. Huge, even unconscious. One had dark hair that fell across a face too perfect to be real, if not for the vicious scar cutting from temple to jaw. The other looked identical, save for the absence of the scar and blood staining his shirt so dark it looked black in the shadows. They were dying. Lyra could smell death on them, sweet and cloying beneath the alpha musk. The one with the scar breathed shallow, each exhale rattling in his chest. The other didn't seem to be breathing at all. She should leave, should run back into the blizzard and take her chances with the cold. These were alphas, and she was a broken Omega in heat. The danger couldn't be more clear. But the golden glow was back, warming her palms, and Lyra found herself crawling forward instead of fleeing. Her hand touched the scarred alpha's chest. Lightning, pure electricity shot through her body so intense Lyra cried out. The alpha's eyes snapped open, silver in the darkness, glowing like moonlight on water. His hands shot up, wrapping around her wrist with impossible speed. He started, then stopped. His nostrils flared. His entire body went rigid. The other alpha moved. One moment unconscious, the next crouched in a fighting stance, despite the blood still seeping from multiple wounds. His eyes, identical silver, locked onto Lyra with an intensity that stole her breath. Mate, he growled. The word hung in the air between them. No, that was impossible. Lyra was broken. Defective. No alpha wanted her, let alone 2. But the scarred alpha still held her wrist, and where his skin touched hers, golden light bloomed. Not from her alone. The glow spread from the point of contact, racing up his arm across his chest, illuminating the cave with warm radiance. Impossible, the scarred alpha breathed. His grip on her wrist gentled, but didn't release. You're dying, Lyra said, finding her voice. You're both dying, I can feel it. And she could. Through the strange connection where their skin met, Lyra felt his pain as clearly as her own. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, a puncture wound that had just missed his heart. His twin was even worse, teetering on the edge of death. The glow in her palms intensified. Let me help you, Lyra whispered. The scarred alpha studied her face. Silver eyes searched hers, looking for deception, for threat, for any reason to refuse. Whatever he found there made him nod. Lyra placed both hands on his chest. The golden light exploded outward so bright she had to close her eyes against the glare. Heat poured through her palms, but this wasn't the destructive fire of Omega heat. This was pure, clean energy that flowed from somewhere deep inside her, through her hands into the broken alpha beneath her touch. She felt his ribs knitting back together, felt torn muscle reweaving. felt the puncture wound in his chest closing the internal bleeding, stopping the poison in his system burning away to nothing. The scarred alpha gasped. His back arched off the cave floor. His hand tightened on her wrist, not in pain, but in shock. "Thorn," the other alpha rasped. "Brother, I'm fine." Thorn's voice came out stronger than it had any right to. "Let her heal you too, Caius." Lyra shifted to the second alpha without thinking. The moment her hands touched Caius's blood-soaked shirt, the same golden light erupted. The same impossible healing energy poured through her into him. This time she could feel more than just his wounds. Through the connection, Lyra sensed his presence. Not his thoughts exactly, but his essence. Ancient, powerful, lonely in ways that had nothing to do with being alone. And beneath all of that, a recognition that resonated in her very bones. Mate. Her omega biology knew it, even if her mind refused to accept it. These alphas, these identical twins, were meant to be hers. The moon goddess had created them for each other, had woven their destinies together before any of them drew their first breath. The healing took minutes or hours. Lyra couldn't tell. All she knew was the golden light, the flow of energy, the feeling of broken things becoming whole beneath her touch. When the glow finally faded, Lyra swayed. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She had poured everything into healing. These strangers had given them every scrap of energy she possessed. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy," Thorn murmured. He cradled her against his chest and Lyra was too tired to protest. "You saved us. Rest now." "Who are you?" Lyra managed to ask. Speaking felt like moving through honey. "Why were you dying in a cave?" The twins exchanged a look over her head. Some wordless communication passed between them too fast for Lyra to follow. "My name is Thorn Shadowmere," the scarred alpha said quietly. "This is my brother Caius. We rule the Shadowmere kingdom." Kings. She had healed alpha kings. Lyra's laugh came out more like a sob. Of course the moon goddess would be this cruel. To let her heal the most powerful alphas in the realm, right before she died in a cave from exhaustion and heat and cold all mixed together. "We were ambushed," Caius added, his voice a rougher version of his brother's. "A rival pack. They left us for dead." "They might as well have," Thorn agreed. "We would have died here if you hadn't found us." His silver eyes studied her face. "Why were you in the blizzard alone?" Lyra closed her eyes, shame burned through her exhaustion. "I was banished," she whispered. "Cast out. Left to die." "Why?" The single word from Caius held barely contained violence. "Because I'm broken." The words came easier in the darkness behind her closed eyes. "My heat came 3 days early. I'm defective. Worthless. My pack didn't want me." Silence filled the cave. Then Caius growled a sound so deep it rumbled through Lyra's entire body where she rested against Thorn's chest. "You're not broken," Thorn said. His hand came up to cup her face gentle despite the strength she could feel coiled in his body. "Look at me." Lyra forced her eyes open. Thorn's face filled her vision close enough that she could count. His eyelashes could see gold flecks in his silver eyes. "You just healed wounds that should have killed us both," he said. Each word precise, deliberate, carrying weight. "You pulled us back from death itself. That's not broken, little healer. That's power. Ancient power that has nothing to do with your designation." "I don't understand," Lyra breathed. "Neither do we." Caius shifted closer, bracketing her other side. Two massive alphas surrounding one exhausted omega in a cave, while a blizzard raged outside. "But we're going to figure it out." "We," Lyra echoed. "You're our mate," Thorn said simply. "The bond formed the moment you touched me. You felt it. We all felt it." "That's impossible," Lyra protested weakly. "I'm broken. Defective. No alpha wants." "We want you." Caius's hand joined his brother's, cupping the other side of her face. "We've been alive for 500 years, little healer. We've waited that long for the moon goddess to send us our mate. Do you really think we'd let you go now that we found you?" Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be real. This had to be a fever dream, a hallucination brought on by heat and cold and exhaustion. But Thorn's hands felt solid and warm against her skin. Caius's scent wrapped around her like a blanket. The mate bond hummed between all three of them, growing stronger with every passing second. "I don't even know you," Lyra said. Her voice came out small and certain. "Then let us fix that." Thorn's thumb stroked across her cheekbone. "Let us take you home. Let us prove that you're not broken, not defective, not any of the lies your pack told you. Let us show you what it means to be claimed by Alpha Kings." Caius added, his voice dropping into a register that made heat pool low in Lyra's belly. Not the destructive heat of her Omega cycle, but something warmer, safer, wanted. Lyra's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. She had spent her entire life being told she wasn't enough. Too weak, too broken, too omega to matter. But these alphas looked at her like she was precious, like she was powerful, like she was exactly what they had been searching for. The blizzard, Lyra managed. We're trapped here until... We'll wait it out, Thorn interrupted. We're not going anywhere. Not without you, Kias agreed. The cave fell quiet except for the distant howl of wind and the sound of three wolves breathing in sync. Lyra's exhaustion dragged at her, pulling her down into darkness. She fought it, afraid that if she slept, she would wake to find this all a dream. But Thorn's arms tightened around her, solid and real and safe. Sleep, little healer, he murmured against her hair. We'll keep watch. We'll keep you safe. And then when you wake, Caius added, his hand settling over hers, we'll begin teaching you what it truly means to be ours. The promise in those words should have terrified her. Instead, Lyra felt something unfurl in her chest. Something that had been locked away for so long, she had forgotten it existed. Hope. Her eyes drifted closed. The last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was golden light blooming where the three of them touched, warm and bright and alive. The broken Omega was broken no longer. The healing had just begun. Lyra woke to silk, not the rough wool blankets she had known her entire life, not the thin threadbare sheets from her room in the Emberfell pack house. This was silk, cool and smooth against her skin, sliding like water across her shoulders as she shifted. Her eyes opened to a ceiling painted with stars. Not real stars. Golden paint carefully applied in constellations she recognized from childhood stories. The moon goddess's chariot, the hunting wolves, the lovers who became the twin moons that rose only once every 100 years. This wasn't the cave. Lyra sat up too fast. The room spun. She pressed a hand to her forehead, waiting for the dizziness to pass, and only then noticed what she was wearing. A nightgown. White silk that probably cost more than everything her family had owned combined. Someone had bathed her, changed her. Put her in this massive bed with its carved posts and heavy curtains, currently pulled back to reveal a room that belonged in a palace. Because it was a palace. The memories crashed back. The blizzard, the cave. Two dying alphas who had called her mate. Alpha kings. You're awake. Lyra's head snapped toward the voice. Thorn Shadowmere stood by the window, backlit by afternoon sun that turned his dark hair to black fire. The scar on his face looked less vicious in the golden light, more like a mark of survival than damage. He was beautiful in a way that made Lyra's chest ache. Where am I? Her voice came out rough from disuse. Shadowmere Palace. Thorn moved away from the window with fluid grace. He wore formal clothes, now black and silver, that emphasized his powerful build. You've been asleep for 2 days. 2 days. My heat, Lyra started, then stopped. She waited for the familiar cramping, the burning need, the desperate omega biology that had gotten her banished. Nothing. Her body felt calm, settled. The heat had broken completely, leaving only a faint warmth that had nothing to do with omega cycles and everything to do with the bond humming between her and the alpha approaching her bed. Broke the first night, Thorn confirmed. He settled into a chair beside her, close enough to touch, but carefully maintaining distance. Chaos and I stayed with you, made sure you were safe. Lyra's cheeks burned. She didn't want to think about what two alpha kings had witnessed while she rode out her heat unconscious. The sound she must have made. The scent she must have released. Nothing happened, Thorn said quietly, reading her expression. We would never claim you without your explicit consent, little healer. The bond doesn't give us that right. Little healer, the endearment settled over her like a blanket, warm but not suffocating. You carried me here, Lyra said. Not a question. After the blizzard cleared, Thorn's silver eyes held hers. We couldn't exactly leave our mate in a cave. There was that word again. Mate. Lyra pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. The silk nightgown pooled around her like water. She felt small in this massive bed, in this enormous room, in a palace that made the Emberfell pack house look like a child's toy. I don't understand any of this, she admitted. The healing, the bond. Why the moon goddess would give a broken omega to two kings. You're not broken, as Thorn's voice carried an edge of command. Say that again and I'll prove it to you. Heat that had nothing to do with omega biology flared in Lyra's belly. She met his gaze, saw the promise there, and looked away first. Then what am I, she whispered. That's what we need to discover. Thorn leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. The healing you performed doesn't exist in normal omega biology. That kind of power is ancient, rare. It hasn't been seen in our kingdom for centuries. So I'm some kind of freak instead of just broken. Lyra meant it as a joke. It came out bitter. Thorne was on his feet in an instant. He moved faster than should be possible, crossing the space between them before Lyra could blink. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are not a freak," he said, each word deliberate. "You are powerful. There's a difference." This close, Lyra could see the gold flecks in his silver eyes, could smell his scent, pine and smoke, and something uniquely him, could feel the electric current running between them where his skin touched hers. The bond pulled, insistent, demanding. Lyra's hands came up to grip his wrists, not to push him away, just to hold on. "I'm scared," she breathed. "I know." Thorne's thumb stroked across her cheekbone. "But you're safe here, I promise you that. Caius and I will protect you with our lives." "Why?" The question burst out before Lyra could stop it. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything just because the moon goddess decided we're mates. Why would you?" "Because you saved our lives when you could have run," Thorne interrupted. "Because you healed us without knowing who we were or what we could give you in return. Because the moment I opened my eyes and saw you, I knew I would burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you again." The words hung in the air between them. Lyra's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Like she mattered. Like she was worth protecting. "Thorne is being dramatic again, I see." The new voice made Lyra jump. Chaos stood in the doorway, one shoulder leaning against the frame, a smile playing at his lips. He looked just like his brother, down to the silver eyes and powerful build. But where Thorne moved with calculated grace, Caius radiated barely contained energy. "Someone has to be," Thorne said without looking away from Lyra. "You're about as romantic as a rock." "Rocks can be very romantic." Caius pushed off the doorframe and stalked into the room. "Solid, dependable, good for throwing at people who annoy you." Despite everything, Lyra felt her lips twitch, almost a smile. Caius noticed. His own grin widened. "There she is," he said softly. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten how." Thorne released Lyra's face and stepped back, giving his brother room. Caius took the vacated chair, sprawling in it, with casual arrogance that somehow made Lyra's heart beat faster. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Confused," Lyra admitted. "Overwhelmed. Like I'm dreaming and going to wake up back in the blizzard." "Not a dream." Caius reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand closed around hers. The electric spark jumped between them. "Feel that? That's real. The bond is real. You're really here, safe in our palace, and we're really going to figure out what you are and why your old pack was stupid enough to throw you away." Lyra's throat tightened. She blinked against the burn in her eyes. "Don't cry," Caius said, alarmed. "I'm terrible with crying. Thorne, you handle crying." "You're doing fine," Thorne said, but he moved closer anyway, settling on the bed beside Lyra. Let her feel what she needs to feel. And that permission, simple and freely given, broke something open in Lyra's chest. The tears came hot and fast. She cried for the pack that had rejected her, for the alpha who had called her worthless, for the girl she had been so certain she was broken that she had almost accepted death rather than fight for herself. The twins didn't try to stop her. Thorne wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Caius kept hold of her hand. They let her cry until she had nothing left, until the tears dried up and left her feeling raw, but somehow lighter. "Better?" Thorne asked quietly. Lyra nodded against his shoulder. "Good." Caius squeezed her hand. "Because we need to talk about what happens next." Lyra pulled back, wiping at her eyes with her free hand. Both alphas watched her with identical expressions of concern mixed with something darker. Something possessive. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You can't stay here as our mate," Thorne said carefully. "Not yet." The words hit like a slap. Lyra tried to pull her hand from Caius's grip, but he held firm. "Let me finish," Thorne continued. "The Shadowmere court is complicated, dangerous. There are wolves who would use you to get to us. Wolves who would see a mate as a weakness to exploit. Especially a mate who appears out of nowhere with no pack, no background, no protection," Caius added. His thumb rubbed circles on the back of her hand. "We need to be smart about this." "So what are you suggesting?" Lyra forced herself to meet Thorne's eyes. "That I hide, pretend the bond doesn't exist." "We're suggesting you stay as our royal healer," Thorne said. "Hide your Omega designation. Present yourself as a powerful healer who saved our lives. Let the court get used to your presence before we reveal the mate bond." Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to demand they claim her immediately, publicly, prove to everyone who had ever called her worthless that she was chosen by kings. But she had spent 23 years learning to read the currents of pack politics. She understood what they weren't saying. They were giving her time, time to adjust, time to grow stronger, time to become someone who could stand beside them as an equal instead of just another Omega hidden behind her alphas' protection. How long, she asked. The twins exchanged one of their wordless communications. A few weeks, Thorne said. A month at most. Just until we can investigate your healing powers, understand what you are, and build you a foundation of respect that has nothing to do with being our mate. Will you be able to do it? Caius leaned forward. Hide what you are. Play the part of a common healer. Lyra thought about the years she had spent making herself small, making herself quiet, hiding her thoughts and opinions behind a mask of Omega docility. Yes, she said, I can do it. Then it settled. Thorne stood offering her his hand. Get dressed. It's time we introduced you to the Shadowmere court. The palace was enormous. Lyra followed the twins through corridors that seemed to stretch forever past windows that offered glimpses of a kingdom spread out below like a map. Mountains in the distance, forests closer in, a river that cut through the landscape like a silver ribbon. Beautiful. All of it beautiful and overwhelming, and so far from the small packed territory she had known. Wolves stopped to stare as they passed. Some bowed to the kings, others whispered behind raised hands. All of them looked at Lyra with curiosity that made her skin prickle. She wore borrowed clothes, simple but well-made, a healer's tunic and pants that allowed freedom of movement. Her hair was braided back from her face. She looked nothing like the mud-covered Omega who had stumbled into a cave during a blizzard. Ignore them, Urin, Caius murmured, close enough that his breath stirred the hair at her temple. They're always like this with anything new. They can sense what I am, Lyra said quietly. Can't they, even if I hide it? Some might suspect, Thorne agreed, but without our confirmation they won't be certain. Omega scent can be suppressed with the right herbs. We'll have the palace healers prepare a tincture for you. Suppressing her scent, hiding her designation. It felt wrong, like denying a fundamental part of herself. But Lyra understood necessity, understood survival. The throne room doors opened before them like a mouth. The space beyond stole Lyra's breath. Massive didn't begin to cover it. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, supported by columns carved to look like ancient trees. Windows lined both sides, letting in light that painted everything gold. And at the far end, 2 thrones sat side by side on a raised dais. 50 wolves filled the room, maybe more. All of them turned to watch as the kings entered. Lyra's instinct screamed at her to drop her eyes, to make herself small, to disappear into the background where Omegas belonged. But Thorne's hands settled on the small of her back. Warm, grounding. Walk with us, he said softly. Head high. So Lyra lifted her chin and walked into the throne room, flanked by 2 alpha kings, and tried to pretend her heart wasn't trying to beat its way out of her chest. Court is in session, Caius announced, his voice carrying through the massive space. We have an introduction to make. The assembled wolves fell silent, every eye fixed on Lyra. This is Lyra Emberfell, Thorne continued. She saved our lives during the ambush on the northern border. Without her intervention, both Caius and I would have died. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lyra caught fragments. Emberfell, never heard of it. How did a nobody save the kings? As of today, Lyra serves as royal healer, Caius said. She will have access to all areas of the palace. She will attend council meetings, and she answers directly to us. More murmurs, louder now, confused, suspicious. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, tall, elegant, with hair like spun gold and eyes the color of amber. She wore a dress that probably cost more than Lyra's entire former pack had earned in a year. Your Majesties, the woman said, her voice silk over steel. Forgive my confusion, but we already have a royal healer. Marcus Ashwood has served in that capacity for 200 years. And he will continue to serve, Thorne said smoothly. Lyra will work under his guidance, learn our methods, expand her considerable skills. The woman's amber eyes shifted to Lyra. The look held calculation. Assessment, dismissal. Of course, she said. Welcome to Shadowmere healer Lyra. The words were polite. The tone made them an insult. Lyra met the woman's gaze and held it. Something her Omega biology screamed at her not to do. Something that marked her as either brave or stupid. Thank you, Lyra said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I look forward to serving the Shadowmere court. The woman's lips curved, not quite a smile. I'm certain you do, she said. The days that followed blurred together in a chaos of learning and healing, and trying not to let anyone see how desperately out of her depth Lyra felt. Marcus Ashwood, the elder alpha who served as royal healer, turned out to be nothing like she expected. Ancient beyond imagining, with white hair and eyes that had seen centuries, he welcomed Lyra with genuine warmth. "The kings speak highly of your abilities," he said on her first day in the healing wing. "Show me what you can do." Lyra worked. She healed warriors who came to the wing with training injuries. She learned the palace's extensive stores of herbs and medicines. She studied anatomy texts that made her previous education look like child's scribbles. And slowly, carefully, she let her power out. Not the full golden glow that had saved the kings. That would draw too much attention. But enough to speed healing, to ease pain, to prove she belonged in this role. Marcus watched everything with those ancient eyes. "You're holding back," he said one afternoon 3 days into her tenure. Lyra's hands stilled over the warrior she was treating. A sprained ankle, simple enough that she should have been able to heal it in minutes instead of the careful hours she was taking. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "Yes, you do." Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You have power, girl. Real power. The kind that doesn't come from study or practice. It's in your blood." Lyra's heart hammered. She forced herself to keep working, wrapping the warrior's ankle in careful bandages. "I'm just a healer," she said. "And I'm just an old wolf who's seen too much to be fooled." Marcus pushed off the wall. "But I won't press. When you're ready to trust me, I'll be here." He left her alone with the sleeping warrior and thoughts that spun like a storm. The twins visited every day. Thorn came in the afternoons after his morning council meetings. He would find Lyra in the healing wing and convince her to take breaks she desperately needed. They walked in the palace gardens talking about everything and nothing. He taught her about Shadowmere politics, the noble families, the alliances that held the kingdom together, the enemies who waited for any sign of weakness. "You're smarter than you pretend to be," he said one day while they sat beside a fountain shaped like a leaping wolf. "I spent my whole life pretending to be less," Lyra admitted. "It was safer." "You don't have to be safe here." Thorn's hand found hers, their fingers lacing together. "You can be exactly who you are." But Lyra didn't know who that was anymore. The broken Omega from Emberfell felt like a stranger. The powerful healer the Shadowmere court was beginning to respect felt like a mask. Somewhere in between was the real her. The woman the twins saw when they looked at her with silver eyes full of promises she didn't know how to accept. Caius came at night. He would appear at her door after dinner, grinning like a wolf who had caught particularly interesting prey, and drag her to the training grounds. "You need to know how to defend yourself," he said the first night. "This court is full of predators, and I won't always be there to protect you." So Lyra learned to fight. She was terrible at first, small and weak compared to the warriors Caius usually sparred with. But she was fast, and she learned quickly, and Caius had infinite patience when it came to teaching her. "There," he said, catching her wrist when she finally landed a blow to his ribs. "Feel that? That's you fighting back. That's you refusing to be a victim." Sweat dripped down Lyra's back. Her muscles ached. She had never felt more alive. "Again," she demanded. Caius laughed, delighted, and came at her again. The touches built, small at first, hands brushing, shoulders bumping. Thorn steadying her when she stumbled on garden paths. Caius catching her when she lost her balance during training. Every contact sent electricity singing through Lyra's veins. Every spark made the bond stronger, more insistent, harder to ignore. She started dreaming about them. Both of them. Dreams that made her wake, gasping the silk sheets tangled around her legs, heat pooling low in her belly, that had nothing to do with Omega biology and everything to do with want. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Lyra fell into a rhythm, healing during the day, walking with Thorn in the afternoons, training with Caius at night, learning to navigate court politics, growing stronger, growing confident. The broken Omega from Emberfell disappeared. In her place stood someone new, someone powerful, someone who could look a room full of nobles in the eye and not flinch. But the mate bond pulled tighter every day. Lyra could feel both twins even when they weren't near. Could sense Thorn's calm focus during council meetings. Could feel Caius's wild energy when he trained with his warriors. They were in her head, in her heart, under her skin, and she was in theirs. Then Isolde Nightthorn arrived and everything changed. The woman from Lyra's first day in the throne room returned with an entourage that made the entire palace take notice. Servants scrambled, nobles whispered, even Marcus raised his eyebrows when the name reached the healing wing. "Isolde Nightthorn," he said. "This should be interesting." "Who is she?" Lyra asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "High-born alpha female. Her family controls the Eastern Territories. Powerful, beautiful, ambitious." Marcus gave Lyra a look that made her distinctly uncomfortable. "And by ancient contract, she's intended to be the king's mate." The world tilted. What? Lyra breathed. A marriage contract signed 100 years ago, Marcus explained. Political alliance between the Shadowmere and Nightthorn families. Isolde has been preparing her whole life to rule beside the kings. No, that couldn't be right. The twins had said they waited 500 years for their mate. They couldn't have a contract with someone else. But Marcus's expression said otherwise. Lyra fled the healing wing. She needed air, needed space, needed to think. She made it to the gardens before her knees gave out, dropped onto a stone bench beside the leaping wolf fountain, while her heart tried to tear itself apart. Of course, of course there would be someone else. Someone perfect. Someone who belonged in this world of politics and power and ancient contracts. Someone who wasn't a broken Omega pretending to be more than she was. There you are. Lyra's head jerked up. Thorn stood on the path, concern written across his features. I felt your distress through the bond, he said, moving closer. What happened to Isolde Nightthorn? Lyra managed. The name tasted like ash. Marcus said she's your intended mate, that there's a contract. Understanding flashed across Thorn's face. He was beside her in an instant, kneeling in front of the bench, so they were eye to eye. There was a contract, he said, signed by our father. We never agreed to it. But, Lyra, look at me. Thorn cupped her face in both hands. The moment we scented you in that cave, any other contracts became meaningless. You are our mate. The moon goddess chose you for us. No piece of paper changes that. Does Isolde know? Lyra asked. Thorn's jaw tightened. No, and that's going to be a problem. He was right. Isolde appeared at dinner that night wearing a dress that made her look like she had stepped out of a fairy tale. Spun gold and silver thread, cut to emphasize every perfect curve. She took the seat to Thorn's right like she owned it, smiling at the assembled court like a queen already crowned. Lyra sat further down the table in the section reserved for high-ranking servants. Not quite noble, not quite nothing, exactly where a hidden Omega belonged. She watched Isolde laugh at something Caius said. Watch the alpha female rest a perfectly manicured hand on Thorn's arm. Watch the court watch them seeing what they expected to see. A perfect match. The food on Lyra's plate might as well have been ash. After dinner, Isolde found her. Lyra was helping clear tables, falling into old patterns from her days working in her parents' inn, when a silk-smooth voice stopped her. Lyra Emberfell, isn't it? Lyra turned. Isolde stood close, amber eyes gleaming with something that made Lyra's wolf want to bare its teeth. Lady Nightthorn, Lyra said carefully, how can I help you? I wanted to thank you. Isolde's smile didn't reach her eyes. For saving their majesties. The kingdom is in your debt. I only did what anyone would have done. Oh, I doubt that. Isolde circled Lyra like a predator evaluating prey. Healing of that caliber is quite rare. You must be very talented. I do my best. I'm certain you do. Isolde stopped directly in front of Lyra, close enough that anyone watching would see it as an aggressive invasion of space. But you should be careful, little healer. The court can be dangerous for those who don't know their place. There it was, the threat wrapped in silk. Lyra met Isolde's amber eyes and refused to look away. I know exactly where I belong. Do you? Isolde leaned in. Her voice dropped to a whisper only Lyra could hear. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a common servant playing dress-up. The kings may be grateful for your help, but gratitude fades. Contracts, however, are forever. She pulled back his smile firmly in place again. It was lovely chatting with you, Isolde said loud enough for nearby nobles to hear. I do hope we can be friends. Then she glided away, leaving Lyra standing alone with rage burning through her veins and the mate bond screaming at her to fight, to claim, to prove to this perfect alpha female exactly who belonged with the twin kings. But Lyra was good at hiding what she felt. She had practiced for 23 years, so she smiled politely, finished clearing the table and pretended her heart wasn't breaking. The next week was torture. Isolde was everywhere, at every meal, every court function, every council meeting that Lyra attended as the king's healer. And she was perfect, beautiful, intelligent, charming when it served her. She knew every noble family, every alliance, every piece of gossip that moved through the court like water. She was everything a queen should be, everything Lyra wasn't. The twins tried to maintain distance from Isolde. Thorn remained professionally polite. Caius barely spoke to her, but propriety demanded they acknowledge her presence, accept her invitations to walk in the gardens, allow her to sit beside them at formal dinners. And every time Isolde touched them, Lyra felt it through the bond, like a needle sliding under her skin. She started avoiding the twins, started taking her meals alone, started staying in the healing wing long after Marcus had gone to bed, treating imaginary patients, and organizing herb stores that didn't need organizing. Anything to avoid watching Isolde play the part Lyra should have been allowed to claim. Thorn found her in the healing wing one night, 3 days after Isolde's arrival. Lyra was grinding herbs she didn't need, hands moving on automatic while her mind spiraled. "You're avoiding us," Thorn said without preamble. Lyra didn't look up. "I'm working." "You're hiding." Thorn crossed the room, his hand closed over hers, stilling the mortar and pestle. "Talk to me. What do you want me to say?" The words burst out before Lyra could stop them. "That I'm jealous. That watching her touch you makes me want to shift and tear her throat out. That I hate being the secret while she gets to play queen." "Yes." Thorn turned her to face him. "Say all of it. Don't hide from me, Lyra." "I can't compete with her." Lyra's voice broke. "She's everything I'm not. Everything you need." "She's nothing." Thorn's hands framed her face. "Do you understand me? Isolde Nightthorn is a political alliance our father tried to force. You are the mate the moon goddess chose. There is no competition." "Then why?" "Because I won't insult you by claiming you before you're ready." Thorn's silver eyes blazed. "When we make you our queen, it will be because you're strong enough to stand beside us. Not because you're desperate to prove something to a woman who doesn't matter." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they felt like a challenge. "How much longer?" Lyra asked. "How long do I have to hide?" "Soon." Thorn's thumb stroked across her cheekbone. "Marcus has been researching your healing abilities. We're close to understanding what you are. Once we can present you to the court as more than just a common healer, we'll claim you publicly, I promise." Lyra wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this was temporary, but she had spent her whole life being told she wasn't enough. And Isolde made it so easy to believe it again. The confrontation came 4 days later. Lyra was in the gardens taking a rare moment of peace when Isolde appeared on the path ahead. No entourage this time, no witnesses, just two females and the tension that crackled between them. "We need to talk," Isolde said. "I have nothing to say to you." Lyra turned to leave. "They're mine." The words froze Lyra in place. "Thorn and Caius belong to me," Isolde continued. "They have for 100 years. That contract isn't just politics. It's a promise. Promises can be broken." Lyra forced herself to face Isolde, especially ones they never made. "You think you're special because you saved their lives." Isolde laughed, sharp and cruel. "You're a temporary distraction, a pretty toy they'll play with until they remember their duty. You don't know anything about what we have." "I know you're Omega." Isolde's amber eyes gleamed with triumph. "Don't look so shocked. I can smell it on you even through whatever suppressants you're using. You're hiding what you are because you know you're not good enough." Lyra's hands clenched into fists. Her wolf rose close to the surface, snarling. "The kings have a choice," she said through gritted teeth, "and they didn't choose you." "They haven't chosen you either." Isolde moved closer. "Or you'd be wearing their marks. You'd be sitting at their right hand. You'd be queen instead of playing healer and pretending you belong." The words hit every insecurity Lyra had been nursing, every fear, every doubt. "Stay away from them," Lyra heard herself say. "They're mine." "Prove it." Isolde's smile turned vicious. "Claim them. Make it official. Show the court exactly what you are unless you're too scared." "I'm not you are." Isolde leaned in close. "You're terrified they'll realize you're exactly what your old pack said you were. Broken, worthless, not enough." Lyra's control snapped. Golden light exploded from her hands. Pure power uncontrolled, blasting outward in a wave that sent Isolde stumbling backward. The alpha female's eyes went wide with shock and fear. "I am enough," Lyra said. Her voice came out strange, deeper, resonant with power she didn't fully understand. "And when I'm ready, I will prove it to everyone, including you." She turned and walked away before Isolde could respond, before she could see what she had revealed, before the shaking in her hands became visible. She made it to her room before she collapsed. The twins found her there an hour later, curled on her bed, trembling with reaction and fear, and the knowledge that she had just shown Isolde exactly what she was hiding. Thorn gathered her into his arms without a word. Caius locked the door and settled on her other side. "I know what happened," Thorn said quietly. Half the palace felt that power surge. "I'm sorry," Lyra whispered against his chest. "I lost control. I ruined everything." "You didn't ruin anything." Caius's hand stroked through her hair. You stood up for yourself, for us. That's not weakness. Isolde knows what I am now. Good. Thorne's arms tightened around her. Let her know, let the whole court know. We're done hiding. Lyra pulled back to look at him. What? The council meets tomorrow, Thorne said. We'll present Marcus's findings about your bloodline. We'll explain what you are and why you're here, and then we'll claim you before everyone. But you said I needed to be ready. You are ready, Caius cupped her face. You've been ready. We were the ones being too cautious, too worried about protecting you from court politics. But Isolde, we'll learn that contracts mean nothing compared to the moon goddess's will, Thorne finished. Trust us, little healer. Trust yourself. Tomorrow everything changes. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She paced her room, mind spinning with possibilities. Tomorrow the court would learn the truth. Tomorrow she would either be accepted or destroyed. Tomorrow her entire life would change again. A knock on her door made her freeze. It's us, Caius called softly. Lyra opened the door. Both twins stood in the hallway still dressed despite the late hour. We couldn't sleep either, Thorne admitted. Can we come in? Caius asked. Lyra stepped aside. They entered and she closed the door behind them, acutely aware that she wore only a silk nightgown and her hair hung loose down her back. Tomorrow is going to be hard, Thorne said. He settled into the chair by her window. The court will resist. Some will call you a fraud. Others will say we're under a spell. We need you to be strong, Caius added. He sat on the edge of her bed. Can you do that? Lyra thought about the Omega who had knelt in mud while her pack rejected her, about the girl who had nearly died in a blizzard, about the healer who had spent 3 weeks hiding what she was. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who had touched death and brought life, someone chosen by the moon goddess herself. I can do it, Lyra said. There's one more thing. Thorne stood crossing to where Caius sat. Before we claim you publicly, we want to explain what it means, what we're asking of you. The twin mating ritual, Caius said. His silver eyes held hers. It's different from a normal claiming. How? Lyra's voice came out breathier than she intended. Thorne moved behind her. She was bracketed between them now. Safe. Surrounded. First lick on, Thorne murmured against her ear. I mark you here. His finger traced the left side of her neck. My claim. My promise to protect you forever. Lyra shivered. Then swallow, Caius continued. His hand came up to mirror his brother's on the right side of her neck. I mark you here. My claim. My promise to cherish you always. And then, Lyra barely recognized her own voice. Then we both claim you completely, they said together. Mind, body, soul, the bond becomes permanent, unbreakable. You become ours, and we become yours. The air between them crackled with tension. Want, need. Thorne's lips brushed the shell of Lyra's ear. When we do this, when we complete the bond, the whole kingdom will know. They'll feel the power surge, see the marks, understand exactly what you are to us. There's no going back, Caius added. His hands settled over her racing heart. Once we start, we won't stop until you're completely, utterly ours. Lyra's breath came fast and shallow. Heat built low in her belly. The bond pulled so tight it hurt. When she managed. After the council meeting, Thorne said. After we present you properly. After the court understands what they're witnessing. But we wanted you to know, Caius said. Wanted you to understand what you're agreeing to. Lyra turned in their arms, looked from one identical face to the other, silver eyes blazing with barely restrained need, hands gentle despite the power coiled in their bodies. Her mates. I understand, she said, and I want it, all of it. I want you. Thorne's control visibly frayed. His hand came up to cup her face. They were so close, inches apart. His breath mingled with hers. Tomorrow, he promised. Tomorrow we make you ours. He leaned in. Lyra's eyes drifted closed. Their lips were a breath apart when urgent footsteps pounded down the hallway outside. All three of them froze. A sharp knock. Your Majesties, a guard's voice strained but controlled. Lord Blackwood has called an emergency council session. He's demanding it convene at dawn regarding the mate bond revelation. Reality crashed back in. Thorne pulled away with visible effort. Caius growled low in his chest. Blackwood must have heard about the garden incident, Thorne said, though his eyes never left Lyra's face. He's forcing our hand. We need to prepare, Caius agreed. Make sure Marcus has everything ready. Go, Lyra said, forcing herself to step back. I'll be fine. But Caius caught her hand as he passed, brought it to his lips, pressed a kiss to her palm that felt like a brand. Tomorrow, he said, No more interruptions. No more waiting. We claim you before the entire court. Then they were gone, and Lyra was alone with a racing heart and a bond that screamed for completion. Tomorrow her life would change forever. Tomorrow she would become a queen, if she survived the council meeting first. The council chamber filled with dawn light. Lyra stood outside the massive doors, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. Inside, 50 of the most powerful wolves in the Shadowmere kingdom waited to judge her, to decide if she was worthy, to determine if a broken Omega from nowhere deserved to stand beside their kings. Marcus Ashwood appeared at her elbow. The ancient healer looked older this morning, lines of worry carved deep around his eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. Lyra thought about everything that had led to this moment. The rejection, the blizzard, the healing. 3 weeks of hiding what she was while Isolde played queen. "No," she admitted, "but I'll do it anyway." Marcus smiled, warm despite his concern. That's exactly what a true Luna would say. The doors opened. Lyra walked into chaos made formal. The council chamber stretched before her like a cathedral, all soaring ceilings and ancient stone. Wolves lined both sides, arranged by rank and family. She recognized some faces from her weeks in the palace. Others were strangers who looked at her with open skepticism. Thorn and Caius sat on twin thrones at the far end. They wore their crowns today, circlets of silver that caught the light. Royal, powerful, untouchable. But their eyes found hers across the distance, and the mate bond pulled tight between them. Not untouchable, hers. Isolde Nightthorn stood to Thorn's right, wearing a dress that cost more than most wolves earned in a year. She smiled when Lyra entered, sharp, knowing, like a cat that had already caught the mouse. Lyra lifted her chin and walked forward, head high, just like Thorn had taught her that first day. "The council will come to order," Thorn's voice rang through the chamber, deep, authoritative, final. "We are gathered to discuss a matter of kingdom security and historical importance." Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves. "3 weeks ago, my brother and I were ambushed on the northern border," Thorn continued. "We would have died if not for intervention by our royal healer, Lyra Emberfell. What we did not reveal at the time was the nature of her healing abilities." All eyes turned to Lyra. She forced herself to keep breathing. "Elder Marcus Ashwood has been investigating these abilities," Caius said. "Marcus, please share your findings." The ancient healer stepped forward. He carried a leather-bound book so old the pages crackled when he opened it. "The healing performed on their majesties was not common Omega magic," Marcus began. His voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. "It required no herbs, no preparation, no learned technique. The power came from bloodline alone." He turned a page. The sound seemed impossibly loud. "I have spent 3 weeks researching every healing lineage in recorded history," Marcus continued. "Cross-referencing abilities, tracing family trees, consulting texts that predate the current kingdom. And I have found only one match." The silence grew teeth. Lyra Emberfell is the last living descendant of the Lunaris bloodline. The chamber exploded. Wolves leapt to their feet. Voices rose in denial, shocked disbelief. Lyra stood frozen while chaos swirled around her. Lunaris. The first children of the moon goddess. The original wolves who had walked the earth when magic still ran wild. They were legends, myths, stories told to children about a time when wolves could heal with a touch and speak to the moon herself. They weren't real, except she was standing here, and Marcus was saying she came from them. "This is absurd," someone shouted from the crowd. Lord Blackwood, if Lyra remembered correctly. "The Lunaris bloodline died out centuries ago." "We thought so," Marcus agreed calmly. "But the evidence is irrefutable. Lyra bears the mark of binding on her collarbone, a seal placed at birth to suppress her power until she was strong enough to control it." Lyra's hand flew to the small scar she had carried her entire life. A crescent moon barely visible unless you knew to look for it. She had always thought it was just a birthmark. "The seal is breaking," Marcus said. "Every time Lyra uses her power, it weakens. Eventually, it will shatter completely, and her full abilities will emerge." "What abilities?" Isolde's voice cut through the noise. Sweet as honey, deadly as poison. "Forgive me, Elder Marcus, but healing hardly seems like a threat to anyone." "The Lunaris bloodline could do far more than heal," Marcus said. He turned another page in his ancient book. "They could see the future, command the elements, shift into forms that made normal wolves look like children's toys. And according to prophecy, the last Lunaris would either unite the fractured kingdoms or destroy them all." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Prophecy." Thorn leaned forward on his throne. "You didn't mention a prophecy." Because I only found it last night, Marcus admitted, buried in texts so old I needed permission from the Royal Archives just to access them. He read from the book. When the last Lunaris rises marked by twin bonds of silver and gold, she shall gather the scattered kingdoms beneath one crown, or see them burn in the fires of her awakening. Every wolf in the chamber turned to look at Lyra. She felt their stares like physical weight, fear, awe, suspicion, all of it pressing down until she could barely breathe. Twin bonds, someone whispered. The kings are honored to claim Lyra as our mate. Caius finished rising from his throne. The bond formed the moment she touched us. The moon goddess chose her for us, and we accept that choice with gratitude. The chamber erupted again, this time with shock that made the previous chaos look mild. Your Majesties, Lord Blackwood protested. With all due respect, you already have a contracted mate. Isolde Nightthorn has been... The contract is void, Thorn said flatly. It was made without our consent by a father who is long dead. The moon goddess supersedes all mortal agreements. Isolde's face went white, then red. You can't be serious. We are completely serious, Caius said, his hand extended toward Lyra. Come here, little healer. Stand with us. Lyra's feet moved before her mind could catch up. She walked through the crowd of staring wolves, climbed the steps to the dais, and took Caius's offered hand. The electric spark jumped between them. Visible, undeniable. Half the council gasped. The mate bond is real, Thorn said. Any wolf here can scent it, see it, feel it in the air between us. This is a trick, Isolde said. Her voice shook with barely controlled rage. Some kind of magic to make you believe it's not magic. Marcus's voice cut through her protest. It's biology, the moon goddess's design. You cannot fake a true mate bond. Then she's using her Lunaris abilities to manufacture it, Isolde insisted, to trap the kings with ancient power. Enough. The single word from Thorn carried such command that every wolf in the chamber fell silent. You will not insult our mate with baseless accusations. Lyra has done nothing but heal and serve since arriving at this palace. She has earned her place here. By hiding what she is, Isolde's amber eyes blazed. By pretending to be a common healer instead of admitting she's some kind of ancient weapon. I didn't know what I was. Lyra's voice came out stronger than she expected. I grew up thinking I was broken. Defective. My Omega heat came early and my pack cast me out to die. Everything I've learned about my bloodline, about my abilities, I discovered here. With Marcus's help. She met Isolde's gaze and held it. I'm not a weapon, Lyra continued. I'm not a trick. I'm just a wolf who was rejected by everyone until these kings showed me I was worth saving. And if that threatens you, Lady Nightthorn, perhaps you should ask yourself why. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush stone. Then someone started clapping. Slow, deliberate, mocking. A man stepped from the shadows at the back of the chamber. Tall, scarred, with eyes that held nothing but malice. Lyra's blood turned to ice. Garrick Ashenlord, the alpha who had rejected her, who had called her worthless, who should have been hundreds of miles away in Emberfell territory. Touching speech, Garrick said, his voice dripped with contempt. But you forgot to mention the part where you're cursed, where your broken biology threatens any pack foolish enough to keep you. What are you doing here? Thorn was on his feet, power radiating from him in waves that made the air shimmer. How did you get into my palace? I was invited, Garrick said. He gestured to Isolde. By your intended mate, who happens to share my concerns about this little Omega and her convenient power. No, Lyra looked at Isolde, saw the triumph in the alpha female's eyes, saw the confirmation. They had been working together. Lady Nightthorn, Caius growled. Explain, now. I investigated Lyra's past, Isolde said, no trace of shame in her voice. When she appeared out of nowhere with suspicious abilities, I thought it prudent to learn where she came from. What I found was enlightening. She pulled a scroll from her dress and handed it to Thorn. He read it, face going dark with fury. This is a report from the Emberfell Pack Alpha, Isolde continued, confirming that Lyra was rejected for being defective, that her early heat marked her as cursed, that she was banished as a danger to the pack. I never hid that, Lyra said, her hands clenched into fists. I told you I was rejected, cast out. You didn't mention that your former pack believes you're cursed by dark magic, Isolde countered, or that Alpha Aldrich warns that any pack harboring you will face the same curse. Oh, lies. All lies wrapped in just enough truth to sound believable. The Emberfell Alpha is a fool, Thorn said coldly, Who mistakes power for curse because he's too weak to recognize the difference? Or he's trying to protect other packs from making his mistake, Garrick said. He moved closer to the dais and Lyra's wolf snarled a warning. I tried to claim her. Did she mention that I courted her for months, planned to make her my mate? Until her heat came wrong and I realized what she really was. A liar, Lyra breathed. You rejected me publicly, called me worthless. To save the pack, Garrick said smoothly, an Omega who can't control her own cycle is dangerous. Add ancient power to that instability, and you have a recipe for disaster. He turned to address the council directly. I came here to warn you, Garrick said. Lyra Emberfell, or whatever she's calling herself now, is not a blessing from the moon goddess. She's a threat. The prophecy Marcus read speaks of destruction as much as unity. Do you really want to risk your kingdom on the broken Omega? Murmurs of agreement rippled through some of the assembled wolves. Lyra felt the moment shift, felt support that had been tentative harden into suspicion. These nobles didn't know her, didn't trust her. And Garrick's words fed every fear they had been too polite to voice. The solution is simple, Isolde said. Her voice rang with false concern. Return Lyra to her original pack. Let the Emberfell wolves deal with their own curse. The kings can honor their true contract, and the kingdom remains safe. No. Chaos's hand found Lyra's, squeezed tight enough to hurt. She's ours. We're not giving her up. Even if keeping her destroys your kingdom, Isolde pressed, even if the prophecy comes true and she burns everything you've built. The prophecy says she could unite or destroy, Thorne said. We choose to believe in unity. Then you're fools, Garrick said, and your kingdom will pay the price. He moved fast, faster than any normal alpha should be able to move. One moment standing in the center of the chamber, the next lunging toward the dais with claws extended, toward Lyra. Thorne and Chaos reacted instantly, shifting into attack positions, but Garrick wasn't alone. Wolves poured from the shadows at the back of the chamber, 20, 30, all bearing the mark of the Bloodfang Kingdom on their armor. An invasion. Isolde had brought an army into the heart of Shadowmere Palace. The council chamber descended into chaos. Shadowmere warriors shifted, claws and teeth emerging. The Bloodfang soldiers met them with weapons drawn. Blood splattered across ancient stone. And in the middle of it all, Garrick grabbed Lyra's arm. His claws dug into her skin. Drew blood. The pain was sharp and immediate, but worse was the feeling of wrongness that flooded through her at his touch. Not mate. Never mate, just violation. Got you, Garrick snarled. Finally. He yanked her off the dais. Lyra stumbled, fell, hit the ground hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Garrick dragged her toward the chamber doors while battle raged around them. Thorne and Chaos roared, twin sounds of fury that shook the walls. They tried to reach her, but Bloodfang's soldiers blocked their path. Too many, too coordinated. This had been planned, carefully, precisely. Should have stayed in the blizzard, Garrick hissed in Lyra's ear. Should have died like you were supposed to. He hauled her through the doors. More Bloodfang soldiers waited outside. They surrounded Garrick and his prize, forming a protective circle as they moved through the palace corridors. Lyra struggled, clawed at Garrick's arm, tried to channel the golden healing light into something that could burn instead of mend. Nothing happened. The seal on her collarbone burned. Hot, painful, keeping her power locked away when she needed it most. They reached the palace courtyard. Horses waited, not wolves. Garrick threw Lyra over a saddle like a sack of grain and mounted behind her. To Bloodfang territory, he commanded. Fast. The horses leapt forward. Lyra caught one last glimpse of the palace behind them. Saw Thorne and Caius burst into the courtyard covered in blood that wasn't theirs, eyes blazing silver with rage. Saw them start to follow. Then Isolde stepped into their path, flanked by a dozen of her personal guards, and Lyra lost sight of them as the horses galloped through the palace gates. The ride lasted hours, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning in a blur of pain and fear, and the desperate pull of the mate bond stretching thinner with every mile. They stopped at a ruin, ancient walls jutting from the earth like broken teeth, the remains of some long-dead kingdom now serving as a meeting place for traders. Garrick dragged Lyra from the horse and threw her to the ground. She landed in dirt that smelled of decay and old blood. Chain her, Garrick ordered. Soldiers moved to obey. Heavy iron shackles closed around Lyra's wrists, around her ankles. They chained her to a pillar in what had once been a throne room, now open to the sky. Isolde arrived an hour later looking far too pleased with herself. That went better than expected, she said, dismounting with practiced grace. The Shadowmere court is in chaos. The twins are trapped dealing with cleanup, and we have the little Luna all to ourselves. Not for long, Garrick said. He crouched in front of Lyra. The twins will come for her. Of course they will. Isolde's smile turned vicious. That's the point. We'll break her seal, take her power, and when her mates arrive to rescue her, they'll find a weapon pointed at their hearts. You can't break the seal, Lyra said. Her voice came out rough but steady. It's tied to my bloodline, only I can release it. We'll see about that. Garrick pulled a knife from his belt. The blade gleamed silver in the fading light. Pain has a way of breaking even the strongest seals. He pressed the blade to Lyra's collarbone, right over the crescent moon scar. The metal burned like ice against her skin. Tell me how to break it, Garrick demanded, or I start cutting. Lyra met his eyes, saw the desperation there, the fear poorly hidden beneath anger. You're terrified, she realized, of the prophecy, of what I might become. Damn right I'm terrified, Garrick snarled. An Omega with the power to unite or destroy kingdoms. That kind of power in the hands of someone unstable is everyone's nightmare. I'm not unstable. You went into heat 3 days early, Garrick said. That's the definition of unstable. Add Lunara's power to that chaos and you become a bomb waiting to explode. He pressed the blade harder. Blood welled around the silver metal. Lyra bit back a scream. Tell me how to break the seal, Garrick repeated. No. The blade cut deeper. Pain exploded through Lyra's shoulder. She felt the seal crack, felt power trying to leak through the fractures. But not enough, not nearly enough. Garrick cursed and pulled the blade back. We'll try a different approach. He nodded to Isolde. The alpha female produced a vial of liquid so dark it looked black. Blood-fang poison, Isolde said pleasantly. Developed specifically to break magical seals. It won't kill you, just hurt. A lot. She uncorked the vial and poured it over Lyra's collarbone. Where the poison touched broken skin, it burned like acid. Lyra screamed. The sound tore from her throat involuntarily. Pain beyond anything she had ever experienced consumed her. Ate through her. The seal cracked further. Power poured out in uncontrolled bursts. Golden light exploded outward. The chains holding Lyra rattled. The ancient walls groaned. More, Garrick demanded. Keep going until the seal shatters completely. Isolde poured more poison. Lyra screamed again and again and again. Through the agony, through the burning, she felt the mate bond. Thorn and Caius, somewhere in the distance, feeling her pain, racing toward her with every ounce of speed they possessed. Hold on, Thorn's voice echoed in her mind through the bond. We're coming. But they were too far away. Miles and miles of territory between them. Lyra would break before they arrived. The seal cracked, splintered. The crescent moon scar on her collarbone split wide open and power poured out like water from a broken dam. Golden light became violet silver. Pure Lunaris magic, ancient and wild, flooding through Lyra's body with force that made her bones ache. Yes, Garrick breathed. Finally. He reached for the power, tried to grab it, control it, make it his. The magic burned him. Literally. His hand came away, smoking skin blackened where it had touched the light. It won't let me take it, he snarled. The power is bound to her bloodline. Then we kill her, Isolde said coldly. Take whatever power we can from her corpse and hope it's enough. Garrick raised the silver blade. Lyra saw her death reflected in its surface. She wasn't ready to die, not like this, not chained and helpless while the wolves who loved her raced desperately to reach her in time. The violet silver light intensified. Lyra felt something shift inside her. The seal was broken completely now, nothing holding back the full force of her Lunaris heritage. Ancient power recognized ancient blood. Lyra's eyes snapped open, no longer brown, glowing violet silver bright enough to hurt. I am not yours to break, she said. Her voice came out layered, multiple tones, human and wolf, and something far older. I never was. The chain shattered. Iron exploded outward in fragments that embedded themselves in the walls. Lyra stood, power crackling around her like lightning, and for the first time in her life she felt whole. The broken Omega was truly gone. In her place stood a Luna, a goddess's daughter, a force of nature wrapped in flesh. Garrick stumbled backward. Fear replaced the greed in his eyes. No, this isn't possible. You wanted my power, Lyra said. The violet silver light spread from her hands up her arms. Let me show you what it really is. She shifted, not into a normal wolf, into something that made normal wolves look like puppies. White fur erupted across her skin. Her bones realigned. Her body grew, and grew, and grew. When the shift completed, Lyra stood twice the height of a normal wolf. Her fur glowed white with violet undertones. Her eyes blazed silver bright enough to read by. Power radiated from her in waves that made the air shimmer. the Luna form, the shape of the first wolves. The goddess's chosen children made flesh and fury. Garrick tried to run. Lyra was faster. She moved like lightning, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. One massive paw caught him mid-flight, slamming him to the ground hard enough to crack stone. "Please," Garrick gasped. Blood ran from his mouth. "I was just trying to protect my pack." "By torturing me," Lyra's voice came out as a rumble that shook the ruins. "By trying to steal what was never yours." "I'm sorry," Garrick wheezed. "I was wrong, I see that now." "You were wrong when you called me worthless," Lyra said. "When you rejected me publicly. When you left me to die in a blizzard. You don't get to be sorry now." She raised her paw, claws extended, each one the length of a dagger. Garrick screamed. The sound cut off abruptly as Lyra struck. Quick, clean. Merciful despite everything. She turned to face Isolde. The alpha female had backed against the wall, amber eyes wide with shock and fear. "You wanted to be queen," Lyra said. "Wanted the power that came with standing beside the Shadowmere kings." "I was promised," Isolde whispered. "The contract means nothing," Lyra finished. "You were never their mate, never chosen by the moon goddess. Just a political arrangement made by wolves too concerned with power to consider destiny." Isolde straightened her spine. Some of her composure returned. "So what now? You kill me too. Prove you're just as dangerous as everyone feared." Lyra considered. The power thrumming through her veins wanted blood, wanted vengeance, wanted to eliminate every threat to her mates, her bond, her future. But she was more than power, more than instinct. She was Lyra, the healer, the woman who saved lives instead of taking them. "No," Lyra said. She shifted back to human form, stood naked and covered in blood that wasn't hers but didn't care. "I'm going to let you live, so you can tell everyone what happens when they threaten what's mine." Isolde's face went pale. "Run," Lyra said, one word, layered with command that made Isolde's wolf whimper in submission. "Run to whatever kingdom will have you, and know that if you ever threaten my mates again, I won't be this merciful." Isolde ran. Lyra stood alone in the ruins, power still crackling around her, and felt the mate bond surge. They were close. So close. Thunder of hooves. Thorn and Chaos burst into the clearing, followed by an army of Shadowmere warriors. They were in wolf form, massive and deadly eyes blazing silver with rage. They skidded to a stop when they saw Lyra. Human, naked, standing over Garrick's body with violet silver light still dancing across her skin. The twins shifted back to human, covered in blood and dirt and looking more dangerous than Lyra had ever seen them. "Are you hurt?" Thorn demanded. He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands running over her body, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," Lyra said. "The seal broke. I killed Garrick." Isolde ran. "We'll hunt her down," Caius promised. He shed his cloak and wrapped it around Lyra's shoulders. "Make sure she never threatens you again." "Later," Lyra said. She was shaking now, reaction setting in. "Right now I just need—" Both twins pulled her into their arms, surrounded her. Let her feel their solid presence, their safety, their fierce protection. "We felt you break," Thorn murmured against her hair. Felt the seal shatter. The power that came through the bond was terrifying. Caius finished. "Beautiful, ours." Lyra laughed. It came out half-sob. I shifted, fully, into Luna form. "We know," Thorn said. "Half the kingdom probably felt it. That kind of power doesn't hide." "Good." Lyra pulled back to look at them. "I'm done hiding. Done pretending to be less than I am. If the court can't accept what I am, what we are together, then they can leave," Caius said firmly. "We rule this kingdom, not them, and we choose you." "We've always chosen you," Thorn added, "from the moment we scented you in that cave. Nothing changes that." Lyra felt tears burn her eyes. "I love you, both of you. I should have said it sooner." "We know," they said together. "We feel it through the bond." "But it's nice to hear," Caius added with a grin. They rode back to Shadowmere Palace as the sun set. Lyra sat in front of Caius wrapped in his cloak, while Thorn led the procession. The warriors who had come to rescue her formed an honor guard around them. By the time they reached the palace, word had spread. The courtyard filled with wolves. Hundreds of them. Come to see the Luna who had awakened, the Omega who had killed her former Alpha and claimed her power. Lyra expected fear, expected suspicion. Instead, she saw awe. The twins helped her dismount. She stood before the assembled crowd, still wearing only Caius's cloak, still marked with blood and power. "The Lunaris Luna has risen," Thorn announced, his voice carried across the courtyard. "As prophesied, as chosen by the moon goddess herself. And tomorrow," Caius continued, We will complete the mate bond before you all, so there can be no doubt, no question. Lyra is ours and we are hers. The crowd erupted in cheers, not universal. Lyra could still see some faces twisted with doubt or fear, but most of the wolves present were celebrating, accepting, ready to witness their king's claim a Luna worthy of legend. A warrior approached Thorn speaking urgently in low tones. Thorn's expression darkened, then cleared. Isolde's guards surrendered the moment they realized their mistress had fled. Thorn announced to the assembled court. They now fill our dungeons awaiting trial for treason. Those who cooperated and revealed the full scope of the conspiracy will face exile. The rest will face the king's justice. The crowd murmured approval. That night Lyra bathed. Let servants wash away the blood and dirt and pain. Let them dress her in silk and braid her hair with silver thread. Tomorrow she would be claimed, tomorrow she would become queen. But tonight she needed to rest. The twins came to her room after midnight, both of them looking as tired as she felt, but unable to stay away. Tomorrow, Thorn said. He settled beside her on the bed. Are you ready? Yes, Lyra said, no hesitation. I've been ready since the cave. It won't be gentle, Caius warned. He took her other side. The claiming ritual is intense, designed to forge a bond so strong nothing can break it. I know. Lyra looked between them. Marcus explained, first lick, then swallow, then both knots at once. Heat flared in both twins' eyes. The whole court will witness the beginning, Thorn said. His hand found hers. See the marks we place, but the completion happens in private, just the three of us. And after, Lyra asked. After you'll be Luna Queen, Caius said. Officially, permanently, bound to us for as long as we all live. Which given our bloodlines could be a very long time, Thorn added. Lyra smiled. Good, I'm not going anywhere. When they held her between them until she fell asleep. Safe, loved, chosen. The ceremony began at dawn. The throne room had been transformed. Every surface covered in white flowers that released sweet perfume into the air. Candles everywhere, hundreds of them, turning the space into something magical. 5,000 wolves filled the room and spilled out into the courtyard beyond. Every pack in the Shadowmere Kingdom had sent representatives. Even some from neighboring territories come to witness history. Lyra wore white silk that flowed like water. Her hair hung loose down her back. No jewelry, no adornment, just her and the power that thrummed beneath her skin. The twins wore their crowns and formal robes. They looked like the kings they were. Powerful, dangerous, hers. Elder Marcus stood before the twin thrones, ancient and dignified, ready to officiate. We are gathered, Marcus's voice rang through the space, to witness the completion of a mate bond chosen by the moon goddess herself. To see two kings claim their Luna. To welcome the Lunaris bloodline back to the world of wolves. Lyra walked forward. The crowd parted for her like water. She climbed the steps to the dais where her mates waited. Thorn took her left hand, Caius her right. Between them she felt complete. The twin bond is sacred, Marcus continued. Rare, powerful. When two alphas share one mate, the bond becomes threefold, unbreakable, eternal. He gestured for them to face each other. Thorn moved first. His hand cupped Lyra's face, tilting her head to expose the left side of her neck. First lick, he murmured, just for her. My claim, my promise. His tongue traced the sensitive skin where her neck met her shoulder. Once, twice. Lyra shivered. The bond pulled tight, then his teeth descended, canines extended into alpha fangs. They pierced her skin cleanly, deeply, marking her with precision that spoke of centuries of control. Pain bloomed, sharp and bright, then transformed into pleasure so intense Lyra gasped. Thorn's mark glowed. Gold light spread from the bite, sinking into her skin, becoming permanent. The crowd murmured, awed. Caius moved before the light had faded. He mirrored his brother's position, tilting Lyra's head the other way. Then swallow, he said, his voice rougher. More wolf. My claim. My forever. His lick was less controlled than Thorn's. More passion. More need. Then his teeth sank in, matching his brother's mark on the opposite side. The pain was familiar this time. The pleasure even more intense. Lyra's knees would have buckled if both twins weren't holding her. Caius's mark glowed silver. It spread like Thorn's had permanent, imperfect. Now Lyra bore twin marks, gold on the left, silver on the right, glowing bright enough that everyone in the throne room could see them. The marks are placed, Marcus announced. The public claiming is complete. The final bonding will occur in private, as is tradition. But Lyra could barely hear him over the roaring in her ears. The bond was pulling, demanding. Both twins' eyes had gone full silver, their wolves barely restrained. They needed to finish this. Now, Thorn swept Lyra into his arms. Chaos cleared a path through the crowd. They moved through the palace like lightning, barely keeping their forms driven by instinct older than thought. They reached the royal chambers. The door slammed shut behind them. Now, Chaos growled. Finally. What happened next was primal, ancient, beautiful. Both alphas claimed her, completely, simultaneously. The bond snapped into place with force that shook the palace foundations. Golden and silver light exploded outward. Every wolf in the kingdom felt it. The completion of a mate bond so powerful it rewrote the very fabric of their world. Lyra screamed, not in pain, in ecstasy, in completion, in finally being whole. The bond settled, the light faded. The three of them collapsed together, tangled and gasping, and completely, utterly claimed. Ours, Thorn breathed. Forever, Chaos agreed. Yours, Lyra said, and you're mine. 6 months passed like a dream. Lyra stood in the throne room, hand resting on her swollen belly, watching young Omegas practice healing magic. She had started an academy, a place where wolves with power could learn to use it safely. No more sealing, no more hiding. The Omega Liberation Act had passed unanimously. No Omega could be rejected without cause. No pack could exile their members for designation alone. The Emberfell pack had sent ambassadors begging forgiveness. Lyra had refused to see them. Some wounds didn't need to heal. Isolde Nightthorn had disappeared completely. Rumors said she fled to the Eastern Kingdoms. Lyra didn't care enough to investigate. The twins appeared on either side of her. They did that now, moving as one, two bodies sharing a single purpose, protecting their pregnant mate. How are you feeling? Thorn asked. His hand joined hers on her belly. Like I'm carrying two alpha wolves who won't stop moving, Lyra admitted. They're strong, Chaos said. His hands settled beside his brother's, like their mother. Lyra smiled. She could feel the babies inside her. Twin boys, already showing signs of the power they would inherit. Lunaris blood, Shadowmere strength, born to a Luna Queen and her alpha kings, the future of a united kingdom. Do you ever regret it? Lyra asked quietly. Choosing me instead of someone who fit into this world more easily. Both twins looked at her like she had lost her mind. You created a healing academy, Thorn said. Reformed Omega rights across the entire kingdom. United 3 neighboring territories under our rule. In 6 months, you've accomplished what we couldn't in 500 years. And you did it while pregnant with our heirs, Caius added, while learning to control Lunaris powers that would terrify most wolves, while becoming the queen this kingdom needed. They called you broken, Thorn said. He turned her to face him. Cursed, worthless. And you became our salvation, Caius finished. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears, grateful tears. She had come so far from the Omega kneeling in mud while her pack rejected her. From the girl who had nearly died in a blizzard. From the healer hiding what she was. Now she was Luna Queen, mother-to-be, the most powerful wolf in the kingdom. And she was exactly where she belonged. The babies kicked. Both twins felt it through their hands on her belly. They grinned identical grins that made Lyra's heart swell. Soon, Thorn said. Very soon, Caius agreed. And then our family is complete, Lyra said. She looked out over the throne room. At the young Omegas learning they didn't have to hide. At the court that had come to respect their Luna Queen. At the kingdom, spreading beyond the palace walls, united and strong and just. This was her legacy. Not the power, not the prophecy, but the lives she had changed, the wolves she had freed. The future she was building for her sons. They had called her cursed. She became their salvation. And she would spend the rest of her very long life proving that broken things, when given the chance, could become unbreakable.